Good morning, everybody. See a lot of dark screens there. Go ahead and get your video going. So I feel like I'm talking to somebody. Michael Stewart, good to see you, my friend. How you doing? Let's see. Yeah, Michael's on. Who else do we have in here? Rick Krebs, looks like we got him on. This is all good. Michael, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Make sure my audio and everything's working. Maybe. Let's make sure built in. Good. All right. Rick, if you're there, if anybody can give me a thumbs up or something that the audio and everything's working, I'll get this party started here. Let's see. Okay, well, here we go. So welcome to Mastermind Monday, everybody. My name is Bo Baker. I am Spokane, Washington. I'm a mentor with RGX. And as always, Mondays are all about getting you guys some content to hopefully grow your business, help your golf courses, and obviously grow the bottom line. So today I want to talk about kind of going from drills to more gamified practice. I'm going to talk about a few drills, but most of it is how do we gamify our practices for adults and actually make it really, really engaging. And so first, if you can, type in the chat box if it's there. I always like to start out with a question. How do you currently structure your adult practice sessions? Are they swing lessons? Are they training aid stations, challenge stations, games, or something else? And so just kind of get you thinking about this a little bit, but how do you structure those sessions? There's the classic swing lesson, which I obviously have done, and I still do them at times, right, to help my players hit it a little bit better. But that's going to be your one-on-one private lesson, on the range, helping with swings, and then training aid stations. We all understand this stuff. But today I want to challenge you a little bit on, how do you, A, B, C, and D, Michael, very good, right? All of them. We do all of them, and I would assume that we do a mix of all of them, right? And that's technically, typically what we do. And so with that, I'm going to get into kind of, educating you guys on challenge point, which I'm sure a lot of you guys understand some of this stuff, but this is the simplistic way of how I think about challenge point to get the most out of my players, right? And so we kind of have this continuum, it goes both ways of the challenge point, which we have an easier challenge point we have for lower level players, right? And so if they're a newer golfer, maybe it's simply just getting them to hole a couple of 3-foot putts or whatever, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then also we have a harder challenge point, right, which is higher level players. And so if you get these wrong, and I even see it in my junior classes, I see it in adult classes, whoever I'm teaching, if you get this wrong, your practices can really go downhill very, very quickly. And so I've seen it where I've gotten this flipped, where I've put a harder challenge point for lower level players, and they get so discouraged that they lose all motivation to practice, right? And all motivation to actually care and try and to improve. And then I've also seen it where I've gotten the higher level players on too easy of a challenge point, and what happens with them? They get super bored, right? And so they're checked out. They're not actually improving or doing anything like that. And if you want to deep dive into some of this stuff, a couple of really good resources, obviously. Adam Young does a lot of stuff on challenge point. Go to adamyounggolf.com is what it is. He talks a lot about this stuff. Game Like Training does a lot. And so golf practice, it's a lot of stuff in there talking about challenge point. And when you start to recognize the correct challenge point, you start to see yourself getting a lot more out of players during your practice sessions. And so kind of keep this graphic in mind as we go through some of this stuff today. And then obviously you can adapt what I'm talking about to your players and maybe get a little bit more creative on what you're doing. And so another thing I need you to understand is that benchmarking and testing is really all about setting the challenge point. Okay, that is my goal. When I benchmark and I test people, it's really figuring out, okay, where are they, what is their skill level, where are they at in their golf journey, right? And who am I working with? And so for an example of this is just going to use a 3-foot circle putt, right? So you've got your 3-foot circle and you've got 5 putts around that hole, okay? If I have a player that comes in and they make more than 3 out of 10, then the challenge point is set. Okay, so say they come in and they make 4 out of 10. Okay, great. The next time they do this drill or this game, they need to be trying to get to 5 out of 10, right? And so that challenge point is constantly increasing as you go through. And obviously, if they make, say you get a player, they come in, they make 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, I would say this challenge is not hard enough. And I would say, let's move it to 3.5 feet or 4 feet. Or other ways to do it might be, let's put it on more of a slide slope, right? And more grade on the slope, maybe a 1 or 2% grade going around in a circle instead of a flat putt, right? And that can be a way to set challenge point and really test and understand where somebody is at, okay? Now, if the player makes 3 out of 10 or less, okay, and these are just numbers I've kind of come up with in years of coaching, I'm going to make the challenge easier. Well, how do I make a flat putt around a hole easier? I just make it the same putt. Okay, can you make 10 in a row from the same location to the hole, right? And so more of a blocked practice rather than a random practice, and see how they do here, right? And say they make 9 out of 10. Okay, I'm going to move that to 4 feet and make that challenge a little bit harder in there. And so just understand that when you're benchmarking or you're testing, it's also an opportunity for you as the coach to understand, okay, what is going to challenge this player and how much do I need to challenge the player? Do I need to make it harder, more difficult, or do I need to make it easier to really find that motivating point where they're really engaged, really locked in, and really learning and trying to get better, right? And so, Kelly, go ahead and unmute yourself. You're at the top of my screen. Pick on you. Do you do any of this as far as finding challenge point or mixing it up with your players like this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We always do around the circle, and I set up the 10
Yep.
golf balls around for a 3-footer.
Yep. And do you have any other creative ways of finding that kind of challenge point with players of, say you have somebody that makes 10 out of 10 from 3 feet, then 10 out of 10 from 4 feet. What do you do to keep making it more challenging to keep them? Oh, she might have froze. Looks like she froze. That always it never fails, right? So, but hopefully you guys get the idea of this, right? It's like understand how to set a correct challenge point for your player and understand who the player is, okay? It's not always all about grip and setup and all that. This is very much performance challenge point stuff that I love implementing it into my group coaching. So that's one. So now let's go on, and I'm going to talk about this game. I've been using it a lot lately. I cannot take credit for the game. This is by Trent Warner. If you've read Golf Scrimmages, it's an awesome book that has literally I think 100+ games and practice games in there that you can use for your players. It's an incredible thing. So I thought I would just kind of go over this. And if you've never used this, I'm going to show you how I kind of use it in real life to find challenge point, set challenge point for players. And so how it's set up is this is going to be our putting green. And the way you set it up, first thing you do is you set two tees about 6 to 8 feet apart, okay, on the putting green, okay? And that is going to be known as your starting line, okay? Now, the exterior flags of your putting green, that's these black dots here, those are going to represent your interior out of bounds for this game, okay? And it's also going to define the racetrack. And so your racetrack is between the interior out of bounds and the fringe. That is the racetrack, okay? And you're going to have players putt from the starting line going around the putting green in this order, right? And trying to see how many shots can they get it around in. And man, you want to talk about something that is extremely addictive. This game is extremely addictive. And what I love about it is there's so many teaching points on it as well of, okay, you're going to learn how to control speed. You're going to learn how to control direction. And also on the mental side, you're going to learn what shot planning is all about, right? And playing angles in golf and setting yourself up well for the next shot. I absolutely love this game. I did this with my ladies group 2 weeks ago. And I planned on spending about 10 minutes on this, right? Just to kind of get them going with putting. Next thing I know, I say, okay, I'll buy the lowest score, a drink out of the restaurant, a beer, wine, whatever, do it. And one lady, she the first time she got around, she did it in 11 shots, right? With like 4 penalty shots. And I said, Kathy, if you just eliminate the penalty shots, right? So she just focused on keeping it in play on the next one. Guess what? Her score went down to 7. And she's like, okay, I can do better than 7. Well, 45 minutes later, Kathy got around the putting green in about 5 shots, which was the best she could do, the best anybody could do. I got around it in 5, I believe. I don't think I ever got 4. And she crushed it, right? And she learned a lot. And she's like, man, I learned so much about getting it deeper on the first shot so that I have an angle for the second shot, and setting herself up for all of this, and really learning like how to push, right? And how to improve. And it's like, she set a challenge point in the very beginning of 11. I gave her a little clue. What if you just kept the ball in play? 7. And then from there, it was, okay, I'm at 7. And she was probably stuck on 7 for 2 or 3 rounds. And then she kept on going. All the other ladies, it was the identical thing, right? A lot of them only got to, their best score was 8 or something like that. But it's a great game. Love this game. Some of the little nuances, rules, there's no cutting corners, right? You're not allowed to cut through here. If the ball crosses the out of bounds line on the interior, then you just set the ball right where it crossed, and you add a 1-stroke penalty. And same with the fringe. If it goes out in the fringe, place it back out where it crossed, add a 1-stroke penalty, keep going. Now, again, how do you make it harder? Well, maybe somebody comes around and they do a great score of 5 or 4 or something like that. Well, flip it around, go the other direction. It's going to be a whole new course with whole new putts and no new angles, right? And see if that way is harder. There's a lot of really fun stuff you can do there. So thoughts, feedback on this? Michael, you're in the top of my screen. Do you use anything like this, or have you seen this? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I do, Bo. But I don't have it exactly the way you have it figured out. I do that, and it is a great game, and it is I do mostly kids,
yeah,
and they enjoy it. It becomes a challenge for them, and they have fun doing it.
Yeah, I do with kids. Yeah, every day I have the kids do this warming up while they're waiting for me or whatever, right? I'm like, hey, go do the racetrack, and they're out there playing it, and it's amazing. So, yeah, it's great stuff, and I would definitely try the adults as well. I did it with a couple of my other pro friends who I play in weekly games with and things like that, and man, they were addicted to it. They're like, they hit their first putt and they're like, oh gosh, I put it in the fringe, put it out of bounds right off the bat, right? And they're trying to go around. And so I would say it definitely works for anybody. And I'm sure there's other rules you can do, to increase the challenge point for, I would say, better players. You only give them 2 attempts, right? And you say, you've got 2 attempts to get around this thing in the fewest strokes possible. So you put a limit on how many times they can go around. So great game. I would encourage anybody to try this out with your groups, with your adults, kids, anybody. Give it a shot. So then I want to
one more thing.
Yep.
I'm sorry. One more thing with that game, I actually put like sand resembling a bunker on some spots so they could, so they can manage their speed, to try to get either around the bunker or just short of it to make their shot. So I create a little bit of obstacles for them.
I love that idea. Yeah, I mean, putting like cones out there, right? I mean, we've all got dome cones or whatever, right? Set them out there and be like, hey, you've got to also work around these. I mean, genius, right? And so, and penalize them or however you want to do it. So, yeah, great stuff. Other things I do a lot. So I do this a lot with juniors. I do it a lot with adults as well. But with juniors, I make them run. And so I'll talk about that and how I try to simulate pressure, heart rate, and get them to try to manage their breathing, hit good shots with a higher heart rate, those types of things. But combine challenges, and you can literally set these up however the heck you want. Okay. And so this is just an example of one of mine. I have, and I'm going to show you the Mike LeBeau short game assessment as well here in a minute, that I use that a lot, that will tie into this 40-yard and 60-yard net and the sizes of those. But I have 2 targets on the range, a 40-yard and a 60-yard net. And then I go through this and I tell them, hey, you've got to hit your pitching wedge to within 20 yards of your intended target. Then you've got to go make a 9-foot putt, which is 3 steps away from the hole. You got to make a 15-yard chip inside of 6 feet. You got to hit a driver inside of the fairway, and we define a fairway on the range, what those fairways are. And then I say you've got to hit a 7-iron from 30, within 30 yards of your target, and then make a 3-foot putt and then hit it in the 60-yard net. So the great thing about this is you as the coach, you can come up with whatever shots you want. It really does not matter. Okay. It's a combine. It is a test. And with kids, what I love doing is setting a time limit. Okay. And so I'll set a time limit of, say, the other day I did 30 minutes. I said, okay, you guys have 30 minutes to get through this cycle as many times as you can. And so they start at the 40-yard net. They don't get to move to the pitching wedge until they've hit the 40-yard net. Go to the pitching wedge, then the 9-foot putt, then the 15-yard chip. And they move down. And I told them, because our chipping green is over here, our chipping and putting green is way over here, driving range is here. And I said, it's a requirement that you at minimum jog to that next station. Whenever you're making a change from the driving range to the chipping green, you have to go at a jog. And so it gets their heart rate up, right? And so now they're sitting there and they're tense and they're breathing hard and they're trying to hit shots, right? And they're learning a lot in that time frame of, man, it's a lot harder to hit shots when my breathing is out of rhythm and when my heart rate is up. It's a lot harder. I got to learn to control that, right? And it's getting them that practice. And so nice thing about this too is you can make the challenge point whatever you want. If you have new golfers, say, hey, you've got to hit it within 40 yards with your pitching wedge, not 20, right? Or if it's somebody really, really good, within 5 yards. Whatever it is, you set those parameters on the combine and have a ton of fun with it. I do it with adults as well. I don't make them run, right? But I do tell them, hey, we've got 30 minutes. Let's see out of the 6 adults who can get through this the most amount of times, right? And again, I look at my group and try to set pretty even challenge points so it's engaging for all. And do it that way. And so this is another great way to get some engagement out of players and also mix up the practice and make it a little bit more like what we do on the golf course, right? There's a variety of shots and trying to throw all of that in there. So I love combines, love doing it. And again, you can print these scorecards off. You can make them your own and just like Google Sheets, print them off, give it to them, and they're running. And so it's a great way to do it. So the next thing, this is my template for progress tracking. I do adjust this depending on the point system. Sometimes I'll have more tick marks on the left over here under the score, depending on how the scoring system is. This one is made for 3, 6, 9, and 12-foot putts with a maximum of 12 points. And so basically this can be used, like I said, for any point game that you have. And then it just helps players track their progress. And so what I do with adults specifically is I'll set coins up around a hole. Just an example of how I use this at 3 foot, 6 foot, 9 foot, and 12 foot. And I'll say, okay, to move to the 6-foot putt, you have to make all 3 in a row from 3 feet. And you get a point for each make. As soon as you miss, no matter if you're at 9 feet or 12 feet, you have to go back to 3 feet. Okay. And so they'll go through, okay, I made it to 3. Then they move back to the 6-footer. Okay, they made another one. That moves them up to 4. Then they made 5. Then they missed on their 6th. Okay, they would put a dot at this axis, right, or at this point of 5 on attempt 1. So they made 5 points on the first attempt, second attempt. Where did they get to? Hopefully they go up. They might go down, right? And this graph kind of wiggles up, right? And so you can use this, print it off, give it to them. And then whenever they come out to the practice screen, it's like, hey, go do that drill and track your progress. And it's amazing when people actually get to see and track something so simply. They're like, oh, I am getting better. This is actually kind of fun because I'm getting to track and see if I did better than last time and have that historical data. So really kind of cool stuff to do in there. Andrew Lanahan, you're next up on my screen. Your face isn't showing, but I'm going to pick on you. Do you do anything with progress tracking like this, or could you see how you could use this in your coaching environments?
I don't do progress tracking like this, but I thank you so much for sharing this. I really do like it. We do some TrackMan combines with some wedges, but I really like. I think was kind of important what you said was you kind of hand it to them and let them take some ownership of it a little bit too. So I think that was really important.
Yep. Yeah, I would. And TrackMan combines, Rapsodo has a combine on their stuff, right? I mean, all these launch monitors are coming out with combines to be able to track progress and see improvement over time. And I think it's really important. I would challenge all of you guys, make a library of this stuff, of hard copies. That's my goal, is to make a hard copy library where there's all these little games and progress tracking sheets that go with the game. And it's a 3-ring binder that I just hand to a player and say, hey, when you're in my coaching program, you're going to need this. And it's got all the sheets in there, and they go through and they're just, when they practice, here's the practice, and then the on-course stuff, right? How do we track on-course scores and everything there. So, this is the beginning of those build outs for me, right? But I think it's really important and highly effective for players to have a copy of something and go do it. So it's a great thing. Any other thoughts on this? Michael, Kelly, Kenneth, any of you guys have any questions on this, or did I cover that pretty well? Okay.
I had a quick question, Bo, on the previous page about the pitching wedge going 20 yards. Was that just, what can you talk about that real quick? So you hit into the 40-yard net, and then the pitching wedge, is there another?
Yeah, it's because it's player specific, correct? So everybody's going to hit their pitching wedge different length. We all know that. So what that 20 yards means is actually within 20 yards of your intended target. So
Gotcha.
I did this with my juniors the other day, who were, intermediate at best, and they're shooting like low 80s, high 70s, but they're 12 years old, and I said, hit your pitching wedge, and I make them be the judge of it. I don't sit there and watch every shot and say, yeah, that was within 20 yards or that wasn't. Obviously, if you want to set up cones or whatever, you can. But again, it doesn't really work because I've got one kid who hits his driver 280 and another kid who hits his driver 210. So their pitching wedge distances are going to be different. So I just explained to them it has to stop within 20 yards of whatever your mentally intended target was. And
Gotcha.
With it. So. Yep. So each one of these little notes mean little things different, right? They're just reminders for me to tell them. It's like, hey, 9-foot putt is 3 steps away from the hole. That's what I tell them. I say, sprint up there, do 3 steps away. There's your 9-foot putt. They're running through it. And so, and then they just put it, once they complete it, they just put a tally mark next to it. And as they go all the way down it, then they restart it if there's still time left, which usually there is. I had a kid get 23 tally marks the other day. One kid got 23 and one got 22.
Cool.
Yeah. And obviously there was some finger pointing. Hey, he didn't hit that 9-foot putt. That was like 6 feet. And, but you make all that work. There's a lot of learning points in there. So, that's how it works. So, great question. Okay. Here's the scorecard I came up with. Again, I did not create this assessment. I will not take credit for that. This is all Mike LeBove. I heard it from, what's the podcast Will does? Will hosts it, Golf in the Life of. He had Mike LeBove on that podcast. So if you haven't listened to that podcast, I would highly recommend it. And Mike was talking about this short game assessment and how it was kind of an accident when he created it. But basically he created a 60-yard shot, a 40-yard shot. You see all the shots on here. And then basically tied a point system to all of it. And so for my 60-yard and 40-yard shots, they're nets that are set up on the range. The 60-yard shot is a 12x12 net, and the 40-yard shot is a 9x9 net with a 3x3 bullseye in each of them, okay? And so you would hit 5 balls at each one of these targets, and you'd add up your score, and here's your scoring system over on the left. And the imaginary green is 15 yards off the frame of the net in any direction, is what I tell people, and that's how you score it. What's amazing is what Mike said is when he did this and he created it, and some of this came from the Dave Pell's Short Game Bible and all that stuff, right? Some of the scoring, but he said when he did it and he created it, he went out and he shot like a 72 or something like that in the short game assessment. He went and played golf that day, and he shot 72. He's like, that's interesting. He came back to the short game assessment the next day, and he shot 75. He went out and played golf that day, shot 75. So he's run this now thousands of times with all levels of golfers, Division I, high handicaps, low handicaps, professionals. He coaches Cheyenne Woods, had Cheyenne Woods do it, and he says it's amazing how when they do this assessment in this game, whatever score they shoot in this game, they're within 1 shot of that score on the golf course. And I was like, no, that can't be right. I'm a total skeptic. Like, that's not possible. So then I went and did it, shot 74, went out on the golf course and I shot 74. And then I shot 67. And this week I went out in a tournament in a pro-am, shot 67. Next day, shot 66. And it's all 60 yards and in. And so it's highly addictive. I will warn you of that when you go through this challenge. Highly, highly addictive. Super fun. And now all my juniors can do, those intermediate 12 and 13-year-olds I was telling you about, all they do is come and ask me for this scorecard. And they go down to the range, and as long as the nets are set up, they're out there doing it. And their scores are just going like this, right? Because it's where you score. It's the scoring game. Like, that's where you score. And so this is the scorecard I came up with. I think Mike has another one that he came up with. But I think it's highly effective, and I love using this for any type of player. And I have noticed for people that are trying to break 100 and things like that, trying to break 100 or 95, their scores fluctuate a little bit. It might be within 2 or 3 shots of what they scored in this, but that's just the consistency factor, right? Of they just haven't practiced enough, played enough to be very, very consistent, like, you know, somebody breaking 90 or 80. So thoughts, questions on any of this before I kind of let you guys go in peace here? So Michael, have you ever used this, Michael? You seen this?
No, I never did, and this looks real fun. And I'm going to try it for myself first. This looks challenging, to tell you the truth. You know?
Yeah.
So I'll definitely. I took a picture of it, so I'm going to definitely try this on me before I implement it on my students.
Yep. I actually was working on it this morning. I'm coming up with a diagram on how to build the nets for the 60 and 40-yard shot. In all the, I mean, you can literally build them from buying conduit from Home Depot, and then I have a supplier that has the fittings that make, I mean, and then buy a net off Amazon. I built it in literally 15 minutes. It took me to build each one of these. And then you just set them out on the range and call it good. So super cool, lots of fun. I would highly recommend trying it out. So, but with that, everybody, that's kind of my presentation, Mastermind Monday for today. So I'll let you go. But if there's anything we can do to help, or if you know anybody that needs some help, send them to us to help them make some more money and get some time back. So thank you, everybody, for being on the call. Have a great Monday.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep. See ya.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.